All right, today we are diving into something huge. We're talking about the philosophy of the other, a way of thinking that really shakes up the foundations of Western thought. It's a journey beyond these closed-off systems and towards a totally new idea of what liberation can be.
You know that feeling, right? Like you're just hearing the same stuff over and over again? Well, it's not just your social media feed, I promise. From a philosophical point of view, it actually points to a way bigger problem. What happens when an entire way of thinking becomes so complete, so locked down, that there's literally no space for anything truly new to break in?
Yeah, and this isn't some minor thing. We're talking about a powerful idea that's been shaping Western thought for, about 2,500 years. It's this deep-seated habit of trying to make everything fit into one big, neat, unified system. The idea is that everything that exists should fit into a single reality, a reality that we can see, that we can understand, and ultimately, that we can control.
Okay, so to really get to the solution here, we first have to understand the problem. And that problem has a name: totality. Now, it sounds kind of grand, doesn't it? But as we're about to see, it can be, well, pretty tyrannical. So what exactly is this ontology of totality? Let's break it down. Think of it like this. It's the belief that all of reality is one single, all-encompassing system, a closed circle, and everything inside that circle is what's called the same. It's what's real, what we can know, what matters. Now, anything that doesn't fit, anything on the outside, is either forced into the system and made to fit, or it's just dismissed as not real, as non-being.
And believe me, this idea has some deep roots. It goes all the way back to ancient Greece with Parmenides, who basically said, to think and to be are the same thing. Fast forward to modernity, and you get Descartes, who puts the I think, the ego, right at the very center of everything. Then you've got Hegel in the 19th century with his idea of an absolute spirit that basically knows and is everything. And get this, even 20th century thinkers like Heidegger, who really tried to escape this, ended up still kind of trapped inside this very tradition of the same.
Okay, this is where it gets really serious. This isn't just abstract philosophy. It has brutal, real-world consequences. See, when you define reality by the same, you're creating a standard, and anyone who doesn't fit that standard automatically becomes the other. And historically, who's been the same? The Greek, the male, the master, the colonizer. And who's been the other? Well, the barbarian, the female, the slave, the colonized. They're not seen as fully human. They're seen as a kind of subspecies, something to be controlled. And if you think that's an exaggeration, listen to this. The philosopher Enrique du Sol comes along and drops this absolute bombshell of a quote. He says that even systems we think of as polar opposites, like capitalism and orthodox Marxism, are, at their core, ontologically the same. Why? Because they both operate on that same logic. They're both these massive, totalizing systems that try to suck everything into their own worldview, leaving zero room for anything that's truly independently different.
So, here's the really crucial takeaway from all this. This worldview, this ontology of totality, it's not just some neutral way of describing reality. No way. It's more like an intellectual machine that churns out justifications for oppression. It turns people who are different into things, into objects to be controlled, problems to be solved, or resources to be exploited. It stops seeing them as people to actually encounter.
Okay, but what if that entire starting point is just wrong? What if for 2,500 years, philosophy has been looking in completely the wrong direction? That single question is what opens the door to a completely radical alternative.
And here it is. This is the revolutionary idea. What if philosophy's true starting point isn't the I thinking about everything? What if it's an encounter? That simple, fundamental, face-to-face moment with another human being. This brings us to a new idea, the metaphysics of alterity. It's a philosophy pioneered by Emmanuel Lévinas. Now, alterity is just a fancy word for otherness. And what Lévinas says is, forget starting with being. Philosophy's real starting point is ethics. It's the ethical relationship you have with the other, a reality so profound that it can never, ever be fully contained or understood by your system. You can really see the fundamental shift here. The old way, the ontology of totality, is all about seeing. It's me looking out at the world, categorizing it, containing it all from my perspective. But this new way, the metaphysics of alterity, it's about hearing. It's not about looking at the other to label them. It's about hearing the voice of the other. That voice breaks into my world and reveals a totally separate, free person.
And for Lévinas, this whole encounter happens in the face. And he's not just talking about eyes, nose, mouth. The face, its vulnerability, it's not a weakness. It's an ethical command. The face, he says, resists my power of power. It doesn't fight back physically. It resists my very ability to dominate. And in its vulnerability, it speaks a command: you shall not kill. It's like the most fundamental ethical law, just staring you right in the face.
So, where do we find this face? Where is this command the strongest? Lévinas says it's in the face of the most vulnerable among us: the orphan, the widow, the foreigner, the poor. These are the people who, just by their existence, challenge my nice, tidy, self-contained world and call me to be responsible.
All right, so we've got this incredible philosophical breakthrough. But what good is it? How do we take this idea of alterity and actually use it to change the world? How do we get to liberation?
And this is where that philosopher we mentioned earlier, Enrique Dussel, comes back into the picture. He took this powerful idea from Lévinas and applied it directly to the 500-year experience of Latin America. He used it as a lens to look at colonialism and oppression.
And Dussel did something absolutely critical here. See, for Lévinas, the other was this universal philosophical concept, powerful but kind of abstract. Dussel gave that other a name, a concrete historical face. He said the other isn't just an idea. The other is an Indian, an African, or an Asian, the actual colonized and oppressed people of history.
And from there, Dussel lays out 3 practical areas for liberation. First, the erotic. This is about moving beyond patriarchal domination to a real relationship between man and woman as truly distinct others. Second, the pedagogical. This means rejecting what's called banking education, where you just dump information into a student's head and instead creating a space where the teacher and student learn from each other's newness. And third, the political. Shifting from a system where one nation dominates others to a system based on service and mutual respect between peoples.
All of this leads to a completely different definition of liberation. This isn't about the oppressed taking over and becoming the new oppressor. That just keeps the same old system going. True liberation, Dussel says, is about the reconstitution of the alterity of the oppressed. It's about restoring their otherness, their uniqueness. It's about breaking the cycle for good.
So, where does this whole journey leave us? It's pretty amazing, right? We've gone from this ancient philosophical problem all the way to a radical new solution that can reshape everything from our personal ethics to global politics.
So let's just boil this down to the key takeaways. First, philosophy's true starting point isn't knowledge, it's ethics. It's not what I know, but how I treat you. Second, be suspicious of any worldview that claims to be the only one. It's often hiding a logic of oppression. Third, true liberation isn't about flipping the power structure. It's about listening to the voice of the oppressed other. And finally, real change, it doesn't come from inside the system. It has to come from the radical newness of the outside.
And that brings us to a final question, and it's one for you. Look around our world today. Who is the other? Who are the people being silenced or ignored or forced to fit in? Who's being pushed outside that circle of the same? Because figuring that out, well, that might just be the very first step on the path toward liberation.